Hi everybody, it is April and I'm in my craft room, and today we're going to make wine totes. Wait a minute, don't go anywhere yet. Just because this isn't a quilt tutorial doesn't mean you won't like it. Who doesn't drink a little wine every now and again? And who doesn't know someone who drinks some wine? I have two different versions of this pattern. One is using a placemat, and it is a quilted placemat so that there is some padding in there to keep your bottle of wine cool or maybe room temperature. And the second one is handmade using rectangles and batting on the inside. Let's get started. I love the Pioneer Woman's designs, and I really like her placemats because you can do things with them besides set a plate on them. These are some of the designs. They're two-sided, and this is the one that I'm going to use today to make my wine tote. The beauty of these placemats is that they are perfectly sized. You have an inside and an outside, or an outside and an inside. If you need binding that matches, you can just take the binding off before you start cutting and then use that binding to replace the raw edges that you create when cutting down this placemat. This is a sample. This is a different placemat that I used. I used Velcro to keep it closed. I took the same polypropylene webbing that I used on my totes and made a handle. So let's make this one super quick. But before we make that one super quick, I also wanted to go over this little beauty. This is done in a Christmas fabric. It is lined. You know, it's really cute and it's very useful, I think. So we're going to make this one too. Although instead of using a Christmas fabric, we're going to use an appropriate fabric that is wine glasses. This is by 3 Wishes. First, we're going to start with our placemat wine tote, and we'll move on from there. What I am going to do while cutting this is try and preserve any binding that I can. And if I can't preserve it, then I am going to rip it out. I know, I'm actually saying this, but it just gives a cleaner looking wine tote, so I'm gonna do it. I cut off my binding. Now I am going to cut this placemat at 3 3/4 inches. And I should have mentioned you will need 2 placemats, 2 quilted placemats, in order to do this project. I'm going to flip this end over where I still have my binding, and I'm going to cut 3 3/4. This is going to be this part of the project. This was the sample. You can see where I stopped the binding. So I added some of the binding that I cut to cover up this raw edge. This time I'm going to cover that binding correctly. And then we will want to put some binding here because this is going to be our top flap. This particular one can be this piece, and it's going to go all the way down and around. So I'm going to take the binding off one end of this. So we've got the back that has the flap, and then we've got the front. Now we need our 2 sides. And this is where our extra placemat comes in. So I think what I'll do is I will cut off 4 inches with the side with the binding of this placemat, because I don't need that binding edge, and that way I've got it if I want to make another wine tote. Then I will measure 3 3/4. I can go ahead and add my Velcro. I found these Babyville Boutique. I don't even remember where I got them. I believe I have a yellow. I believe I was wrong. You know what? I think I'm going with red. I do need to add my binding to this side so that it, matches, so there's not a raw edge. What I did with this piece is I folded the top over and then pressed it and then pressed it again. So now I can put this binding over the raw edge of the top piece of binding and attach it and cover up so I don't have any raw edges. This piece should be plenty long enough for us to get it into the seam. I also want to go ahead and attach my strap to one side while it's free. First thing, let's put our binding on. Get that out of the way. Let's add our Velcro piece. I am just going to sew down each side. This will be folded over like this. So let's connect these 2 pieces. So this is going to go down and around. This is going to go here. Okay. I'm going to use a 1/2 inch seam for this. Now we need to connect these pieces to the project. I'm going to make sure these line up. When we open this up, this will be this side of our project. Now I want to sew this side. So I want to make sure that my binding meets and that my pretty sides are together. Okay, so we've got our pieces in place. I'm going to put the strap this, and I'm going to move it more towards the front because I will have seams on either side. Now we just need to connect our pieces. I'm going to fold this over, do the same thing on this side. You can see it's starting to form. We've got this box. Here is our flap, and when it's done, it will be turned the right way. Now I need to sew up either side. All right, so this is inside out. So here we have our wine tote. All we need to do is add the Velcro on the flap, and it's ready to go. So as you can see, this is the perfect project if you are in a big hurry. How cute are these? But what if you don't have a placemat? Maybe you need, I don't know, another type of wine tote. Stay tuned, April's got you covered. Some more wine. Ooh, here's a bottle. Now on to our pieced wine tote. You're going to need some fabric. This is directional fabric, so I have to be conscious of the way that I cut it because I don't want my wine glasses to be upright on one side and upside down on the other. 4 3.5 by 9.5 inch cuts. Straightening it out. So I'm going to cut this piece at 9.5 inches, and then I will get 4, at least 4. And I might be able to get my handles out of it as well. We have plenty of fabric to cut out our handles because our handles are the same width as the rest of our pattern, but they're shorter. So we'll just cut the 3.5 inches and cut them down to 6.5 inches. We're okay on the front of making sure that our directions are okay. So we'll have wine glasses pointing towards the top. I'm going to sew all these pieces together. I'm going to sew the 4 sides together, and then I'm going to sew the handle together so that we can have as few raw edges on the inside of our project as possible. I want to be sure when I sew them together that the wine glasses are facing up on both sides. All pressed. It does not matter which way you press because this is all going to be covered up with batting. Now before I press this, I'm going to cut the ends to the 6.5 inches that they should have been. And we can't forget to cut out the bottom because without the bottom, the bottle will fall out. And here is our handle. Let's tackle the body of our project first. I had leftover batting from my last project. And look at that! It fits perfectly. Isn't that great how you can take pieces and parts from what you've worked on and reapply them? You know, I am just going to set this on top. I don't even have to worry about it being measured incorrectly because guess what? I'm just going to cut the batting. So that is the batting for this piece. We also need batting for our handle, and I just so happen to have another piece of batting that is left over. This is going to be too wide, but that's okay. We can cut it down. So we have batting on our handle. We have batting on the main piece of our project. We need a bottom, and I'm going to say we're going to cut it at 3.5 inches. So here is the lining that I used previously, and I want to use it as well. No matter what I do, I'm not going to have enough of this. And I'm not going to sew pieces together because that's what I'm trying to avoid. Let me go find something appropriate. Purple will be okay. My second favorite color, purple. This will look really nice as the interior. Although I don't know about you all, but I have the hardest time finding selvage on batiks. I mean, I know it's there, but it's not really easy to see. And how am I ever supposed to remember who this is by if there's no selvage? Actually, let's do what we did before. Just lay this puppy down. So there's that sandwich. Now this way, if you measured wrong, it doesn't even matter because you're using what you measured incorrectly to cut out the rest of your project. Now I got a little overzealous with this because I do not want there to be any seams where my handle is. We're going to take the lining off the back of our handle, and then we are going to put right sides together so that the batting is exposed on the back, and sew a seam down each side, 1/4 inch. Batting, stitching. I'm hoping this will be the hardest part of this project, is turning our handle inside out. And then what I'll do is once I have this turned the right way, then I will go ahead and top stitch my handle so it will be all ready. So I want to thank you all for watching. It's not all about quilts. In the craft room, you can do all kinds of different projects. Here we have our completed handle. So let's move on to our main body. We're going to do the same thing that we did with our handle with the lining. And right now we're just going to worry about getting the lining across the top. And sew over to this side of the handle. And then I'll worry about putting the other piece of the handle in place. I'll bring you to the sewing machine to show you what I'm doing. And we'll figure out together whether or not I know what I'm doing. And then I want the other side of my handle over here. So I'm going to get as close to where I need to be as possible. Now I'm going to wrap my handle around. I want to leave room here so I can sew my pieces together. Then I'm going to pull my fabric over and sew. So now I will flip this over, and here I've got my handle, nothing showing on the inside. There are no raw edges on the inside of my bag. Keep in mind, this is just the inside of the bag. I'm just trying to prevent exposed edges. So what I've done is I've sewn down the sides and the top, although because my batting was a little short, it didn't get the batting in, which was fine. I'm good with that. So I've got my handle on the inside, and we're going to flip this over. And these are just to keep from having raw edges on the inside of our wine bag. So let's turn it right side out, push the corners. So now you can see I've top stitched along the top. And now I want to see what I can do about the bottom. So let's go put the bottom in. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a stitch and then lengthen it way out so that I can baste these two pieces together. So I want right sides together. So now we've got that in. Now I'm going to fold this over. I'm going to fold this over. So I think we're going to sew down this seam first, and then we'll put the last stitch in the bottom. So now we've got this last seam, and then we should be done with our wine tote. Let's turn this right side out. So here you have your wine tote. Let's see if I can fit a bottle in it. And you are ready to roll. There you have it. You can make wine totes for gifts. It doesn't have to be just for Christmas. It can be all year round if you're celebrating anniversaries, any type of holiday, birthday, or you just have a friend who's been extra sweet and you want to give them a token of your appreciation. Have a great day, eat some chocolate, and be kind to everyone. Until next time, bye. And maybe you want a glass of wine while you're doing them. It's okay. Seams don't always have to be straight. Whew. I'm going to bed. Night. Out each individual piece. And you don't get it. Okay. I can't find anything in this craft room. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. 4.5 because our handles,